Hi, everybody. We are going to get started. Thanks so much for joining us for our last event of planned content for the year. We have some housekeeping just to get started. So our agenda today, our main presentation is going to be Tableau tipping and tips you never saw coming, which is going to be really, really exciting. We'll be getting to that in just a few minutes, but for some housekeeping, first off, we always share this at the start of meetings. This is the contact info for myself, Mary, and Greg, your three user group leaders. So if you need to reach out with any questions, or if you want to be a speaker, anything, feel free to reach out to us at this. And these slides will be posted on our community page, which is here. If you are not registered, it's very easy to register. Just hit join group, and this is where we put all of our recordings from our meetings. We have a Viz gallery with our meeting calendar, and we'll post job postings here and stuff if any of our companies are hiring. And if your company is hiring, you're welcome to post a link to the job description as long as it's somewhat related to Tableau. Or if you have any Tableau tips or articles or anything, feel free to use the community page for that. Really, really exciting is our upcoming Denver Tug Holiday Party. This is going to be our first in-person event of the year, and my first in-person event with the Tug since I took over, along with Mary and Greg. So it's going to be Wednesday, December 1st from 6 to 8 p.m. at Wincoop. I think that's how it's pronounced, Brewing in downtown. Attendance is limited, so register now. And if you do register and then you can't make it, just update your registration so that others can attend. We will have an amount of money from Tableau, still a little TBD to provide drinks and appetizers. And then after we exceed that minimum or that maximum, it'll be up to you guys to pay for your own drinks. But we should be able to get a really nice spread with appetizers and drinks and stuff. So we're really excited. Register for this now. The link is here, and I'll drop it in the chat once I stop sharing. And I have it set to 40 people as a maximum right now. I'm working with the venue to see if we can have more than that, but definitely please register. We're so excited to meet all of you and be able to meet each other in person. Next is Tableau Conference. It is next week, totally virtual and totally free. If you're not registered yet, sign up at tableau.com. You can find it if you just go to Tableau. The link, I believe, is on the homepage. And you can plan out your calendar. There's a ton of stuff happening at all hours and time zones, networking opportunities. You can watch Iron Viz, which is really exciting. You can sign up for a brain date or a Tableau doctor appointment. I just signed up for a Tableau doctor appointment to get some help with level of detail calcs and date calcs, since that's an area where I struggle. So if you're looking for some feedback, that's a really cool opportunity to work with a Tableau pro. So register if you're not registered yet. And that is going to be next Tuesday through Thursday. And last, there is a certification out, the Certified Data Analyst Beta exam. The beta ends at the end of November. So if you schedule and take the exam before then, you can receive beta pricing. The beta price is $199 and it'll be $250 out of beta. So it's not a huge cost savings, but it is cool to be able to say that you participated in a beta. It is valid for 2 years, and there's kind of an interesting question format. It's a whole mix of different types of questions, but what I'm really excited about is the hands-on lab. So it's not all just multiple choice outside of Tableau, where you really have to know things theoretically, not just like when you're in the tool and you can kind of like figure it out, but it'll be a mix of both. And I'm taking it next Friday, so I'll be under NDA, but I'm happy to answer really basic general questions, and I won't get my results back for like months, so I won't really know how I did for a long time. But if you're interested in signing up, definitely recommend doing it. There's a lot of really good study material in the study guides. So yeah, that is the new certification. And last, if you're interested in speaking or presenting with us in 2022, the speaker sign-up link is there. I'll drop that in the chat as well. We would love to have you, even if you would love to just brainstorm with us about some potential ideas. If you're nervous about public speaking, this is a really, really low intimidation way to get comfortable with public speaking. The group is really nice and welcoming. So yeah, if you're interested in speaking, we would love to have you. And with that, I will turn it over to Kevin for Tableau tipping and tips you never saw coming. I will stop sharing and turn it over to you, Kevin.
Thanks, Caitlin. Let's make sure you can see my screen. You see it okay?
Yep.
All right. All right, thank you. Sounds like you guys have a lot going on. I'm super jealous of the in-person meeting you guys are going to have. So I may just touch on that briefly here momentarily. But yeah, today I'm going to be doing some Tableau tipping, plus something I call tips you've never saw coming. So we'll get into that momentarily. Again, my name is Kevin Flerlage. I'm one of the 40-something Tableau Zen Masters through Tableau. And I'm the manager of business intelligence at a company called Unifund. Unifund is actually it's only a very small company, financial company. It's run by Tableau Hall of Famer, Tableau Zen Master Hall of Famer, Jeffrey Schaefer, which you guys probably know. He's like Tableau famous, right? So I'm also an identical twin. You guys might know the website flerlagetwins.com. That's me on the left and Ken on the right. We are identical twins. We looked exactly alike as kids, not as much anymore, but we are identical twins. We're both Tableau Zen Masters. We run the website flerlagetwins.com, where you get tons of Tableau content. So the fact that we are identical twins means that people like to know how alike we really are. Well, we kind of do the same thing for a living. He does a little bit different job than I do, but we can use some data to kind of tell you how alike we are. So start off by looking at where we live. So I live in Burlington, Kentucky. It was the northern part, which is just 20 minutes outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. I do work in Cincinnati, Ohio. And Ken, he lives in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, which is 20 minutes outside of absolute nothingness. Nothing, maybe some cow pastures, but there's really nothing there. Ken grew up in the Burlington area with me, and obviously with me, that would be silliness. And he met a girl from Pennsylvania while he was in Scotland studying abroad. So 20 years ago, he moved up there, still with her, and has a couple of kids. The only thing famous about Williamsport, Pennsylvania is the Little League World Series happens there. Everything else, it's nothing. There's nothing there. What we like to visualize. So Ken likes to look at serious topics like religion, war, endangered species, and politics, where I like to tackle the really hard-hitting subjects like Adam Sandler, video games, cartoons, and famous hot dog eating competitions. If you guys aren't aware, Coney Island, New York hosts a hot dog eating competition every year. And this is one of the first visits I've ever created. It's not updated, but this guy right here, Joey Chestnut, in 10 minutes ate 75 hot dogs and buns. So pretty crazy to watch. So anyways, I like to visualize things that aren't that serious. But ultimately, people want to know who's the best of this Tableau thing. So we can use some data to show that, right? If you're not familiar, this is something from Joshua Tapley. He calls it Cerebro, and it is basically where he scraped Tableau Public and got hundreds of thousands of authors. Now, this is not encompassing all of Tableau Public, but it's a huge percentage. And we can look at a couple of different data points. We can look at number of followers on Tableau Public. Andy Kriebel is always at the top of that list. He's at the top of every list, so I don't even try to catch him. But you can see me, number 3, and Ken, a distant 6. So I've got him on that one. Or we could look at number of favorites on Tableau Public. Again, Andy Kriebel, kicking the snot out of everybody. You got me at 2nd, you got Ken at 3rd. So looks like we can answer that question just using some data. So, and sometimes we do a presentation like this together, and Ken interrupts me and yells at me and stuff. But the truth is, Ken was a Tableau Zen Master before I even downloaded the software. So he was a DBA for 10 years. He is exponentially better at this stuff than I am. So I will give him props. I learned a lot from him, and he's still very helpful all the time. So yeah, he's better. I'll give it to him. Credentials, we don't have to go through all that stuff. I did want to show something before I get to this. And we were talking, this is for impromptu, Greg, and Caitlin, but we were talking, you guys are having that event, virtual event, and you said that you haven't met a lot of these people in person. And I was talking about how, the first Tableau conference I ever went to, you're used to seeing people on these little LinkedIn pictures or Twitter pictures, and you don't know if they're 4'6" or if they're 7'8". And so you don't really know because it's a little tiny picture like this. So I believe you guys had Keith Dykstra present a couple months ago. And if you didn't know, I'm 5'10", but Keith Dykstra, there he is on the left, he's almost 6'10" or something like that, 6'8", something like that. So he is towering over me. This is also David Murphy. If you don't know him, he's from Australia, or no, Singapore. And he's also like 6'9", so former Tableau Zen Master. Just thought that'd be fun to share. So if Caitlin is like 7 foot tall, that'll be kind of an interesting story to tell people. So, all right. So I'm going to be doing today just kind of a compilation of tips. It might not be super pretty looking, but I'm going to just go through a bunch of different tips. And then I'm going to get into something I call tips you never saw coming. We'll get to that when we get to that, but let's just start off with some tips for now. I'm going to jump into Tableau, nothing pretty here. And we're just going to probably run through maybe 20 tips really, really quickly. So first off, I'm going to start talking about the in operator. So you guys may be aware, I think it was 2020.3. So about a year ago, Tableau released the in operator. So we're going to show you how that works. I have just a bar chart looking at subcategory, sales by subcategory, and I've highlighted a couple of different subcategories: art, chairs, machines. I'm just going to make the assumption that these are subcategories that I'm concerned about for some reason. So I am going to edit this in operator. For now, what I have is just a case statement. Case statement says, when the subcategory is art, machines, or chairs, then label it as concern. And I've got that on color, and otherwise no concern. So I'm just kind of manually hard coding that in. So what I want to do is change this to the in operator. So you probably noticed, if you weren't aware, you can hit the control key and use your mouse wheel. You can zoom in and out of these calculations. Really good for presentations, or for people like me that are old and their site starts to go bad. So I'm going to change this to the in operator, and I'm going to leave this here so I can see what I have. So I'm just going to comment this stuff out. Okay, right. Well, again, if you didn't know, there's another feature that's recently released, I think in the same version, 2020.3, is block comments. So you can do a block comment, and you can comment out like using these like you do in SQL. So let's get rid of these slashes, and we'll do some block comments. And I'm going to throw in another tip. I think I get 5 tips in on this one worksheet. We could just start deleting these, right, one after another. But imagine we had this case statement that was 20 lines long. Little trick you can do, and you can do this in SQL as well, and just about any other software. If you hit Shift and select, and then we hold Shift and press Alt, we can select all these in an upward and downward, and we can delete them all at once. So it saves a little bit of time, especially if you have like in SQL the other day, I had like 20 rows that I just wanted to comment out, and I just did that really quickly. So, all right, let's start with a block comment. We're going to block that out. Taking a long time just to get to the in operator. So now we want to write this calculation, but using the in operator. So I'm just going to say if subcategory, and we're going to write in. That's all there is to it. And then we're going to open the quotes, and we're just going to type in these different categories separated with a comma. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to worry about chairs. Say if it's in art or machines, then concern, else no concern. We don't have to do the if then. We could just make that a true false if we want. I like to write it out explicitly. All right, so we hit OK. Our chairs are going to disappear, but there is the in operator. In operator is really, really, really handy when you have lots of different values to list out here, and you don't have to write a line for every single row, right? Okay. I'm going to touch on case statements and in operators a little bit later, but we'll move on to some other tips. All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about fixed LODs. Caitlin, you talked about fixed LODs in doing some, I think you said Tableau Doctor at the Tableau conference. So I'll talk a little bit about fixed LODs. One very common use case for a fixed LOD is to grab the latest month or the latest date in your data set, right? So we can do that with a fixed LOD. I just called it the fixed max month. All right. And you see what we're doing is we're fixing it on nothing. That means we're going to fix it on the entire data set. And we're going to take the max of the date trunk month, whatever. It's basically the max month, right? Fixed max month. So then I can drag that onto rows, right? Okay. All right. It aggregates up to the year. I can change this. Oops, I think I misclicked. I can change this to exact date. All right, then it goes continuous, and then I can come back down here and change this to discrete. Okay, finally, I got my December 2018, that last month in the data. We can save some steps, and I'll just, instead of just dragging with my left mouse click, I'm going to drag with the right mouse click. And when I do that, we get this menu that comes up. If I click this discrete one, I don't have to go through all those, jump through all those hoops to get my December. All right. So that's a fixed LOD that just gives us the max month. Now, if you didn't know, and I like to call this fixed LOD, save the fixed, whenever you're fixing on nothing, or I don't know if you want to call it nothing or just fixing on the entire data set, you don't need the fixed at all. You can just do that in the formula, the calculation is exactly the same. So fixed LOD, saved the fixed. Version, I think 2021.1 released something called quick LODs. These are pretty cool. So we've got a table here just showing category, subcategory, and sales. So let's say that we want to just calculate the total sales at the category level. So we could write a fixed LOD to do that. But instead of writing the fixed LOD, I'm going to use quick LODs to do it. So I'm interested in sales and category, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control. And before I do that, let me just drag up. What we really want to do is drag sales on the category. But if I just drag on sales up, what you see happens is it wants to turn it into a dimension. If I drop that, it turns sales into a dimension. I don't want that. I want to drag sales on top of category. So what I need to do is, instead of just dragging, I'm going to press the Control key. You'll see that little thing disappears. I can drop it right on the category, and it creates this calculation. Let's edit that calculation. Fixed on category, give me the sum of sales. If I add that to my measure values shelf, you'll see, if you fiddle with Superstore data, you'll see some very familiar numbers. So it's just Control, drag, and drop on the category. Another way you can do that is to select both fields, your measure and your dimension, while holding the Control key. And then if you right click under Create, you have this new field, this new option, LOD calculation. And again, that'll pop up automatically, fixed on category, sum of sales. And if I hit OK to that, and I think maybe I canceled it because I don't see where it went, but it basically creates the same exact, no, maybe that's it. It creates this, no, that was the same one. I guess I hit cancel, but it'll create that same calculation fixed on the category sum of sales. So quick LODs, new feature in Tableau, kind of cool to do, good for learning how to utilize fixed LODs. Some of my favorite tricks and tips are related to the order of operations in Tableau. You're probably familiar with this. This is a little bit newer version, and it incorporates some things that are really, really handy in Tableau. So I'm going to talk about two different little use cases, and they have to deal with table calculations. Table calculations are always a little bit tricky. So I'm just going to show you one scenario. So this data is a little out of date, but this is the favorites data that was from that Cerebro Viz. It's the number of favorites people have on Tableau Public. If you recall, I said Andy Kriebel's number 1, I was number 2, Ken was number 3, Adam McCann, guy's amazing, love that guy. Number 4, Pradeep Kumar, he's going to be competing, buddy of mine, and going to be competing in Iron Viz next week. Jeff Schaefer is my boss, he's number 6. So as I look through this, I see me at number 2, I see Jeff Schaefer at number 6. I kind of want to see what my colleagues are at. I wanted to see where they rank on the all-time list, right? So what I might be tempted to do, and I guess I should clarify, this is showing sum of favorites, and then I just got a rank calculation. I'll just show you that. Rank sum of favorites. So it's just ranking them from top to bottom, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, right? And the rank, as you probably know, is the table calculation. So if I wanted to see what my colleagues are ranked, one person is named Danushki De Oliveira, one person is Jennifer Dawes. Jennifer doesn't work with us anymore, unfortunately, but I'm going to still call her my colleague. But I might be tempted to just say, let's show a filter, and then we'll just filter down to everybody. Got this little window in my way. So let's just do Kevin first. And this is us, only a couple hundred here. This is just a subset. There's a lot more Kevins on the list. Jeff, if I can click it. Danushki and Jennifer. And now I've answered my question. Oh, wait a minute. I was number 2 and Jeff was number 6. Now I'm showing number 1. And Jeff's showing number 2 and Jennifer 3 and Danushki 4. So what happened here? Well, I can show you. We go back to the order of operations. We have this as a table calculation and this as a dimension filter, right? So if we come back to the order of operations, we come down the list, we see, okay, dimension filter here, and then table calculation here. So what's happening? What's happening is it's filtering the data set down using this dimension filter, and then it's ranking them. So all it's done is filter to 4, and then it ranked them 1 to 4. Well, that's not at all what I want. I wanted to see how Danushki and Jennifer ranked among everybody, not just the 4 of us. So let's clear this out. I'm going to pull this off and get back to where it was. So we can do something using a table calc filter. We have a table calculation here, but table calc filters happen here. So we can essentially compute the table calculation, and then we can filter out our data set. So then it'll maintain that rank, right? So how do we create a table calc filter? Well, we can basically create a table calc filter on profile name using the lookup function. If you ever use the lookup function, we might use the lookup function to do year-over-year changes. We would look at, if we had a row in our data to look at 2019, and we want to look back at 2018, we might use a lookup -1. If you haven't used it, that's okay, but it is a table calculation. But we're going to cheat, and we're going to create a lookup on profile name. It does need to be an aggregation. So lookup min profile name, but instead of -1 or +1, we're going to just say 0. So what does this do? It's basically looking up the profile name itself, since it's not offset in any way, shape, or form, but it turns this profile name into a table calculation. So let's show you how this works. Click all for now. I'm going to show. I may have some family members here. It's 5:30 here, and they're probably going to be walking behind me. So just ignore them. They're not there. So let's do exactly what I did before. Kevin, Jeff, Danushki, and I unclick Danushki, Jennifer, and you can see what happens. It maintained that rank, that table calculation, and it then filtered the data set. So now we can answer the question I had before. How did Jennifer and Danushki rank? Number 75, number 122. Maintain the rank and then filter the data set after that. So really, really cool trick when you're using table calculations. I use this constantly. Another order of operations trick that I use very regularly would have to do with bands, big numbers, big angry numbers. There's another word for it. I won't say it. But so let's assume that I've got data for 4 years. 2019 is my most recent data, my most recent year, and I want to create a band that just shows this 20.36%. That is, this 20.36 is just the difference from the percentage difference from the previous year, right? So I just want this number. I know for whatever reason, I don't like how Tableau does that little blue highlighting. Maybe we'll hit on that as well. So anyways, if I want to show this 20.36, I could use that same trick I used before. Well, let me hold off on that. Let me just show you what happens when I filter down. So you might have a tendency to just say, let's just filter out 16, 17, and 18, and we'll have that number. So as I filter out 16, 17, and 18, you'll see my 20.36 disappeared. Why did it disappear? Well, the table calculation is relying on this row to be able to calculate the percentage difference, right? So if I get rid of that row, that value's no longer there. So we might be tempted to use the same lookup trick we just did, but then we'd have to do the lookup to 2019. Well, what happens when, we're at the end of 2021? What happens when it flips over to 22? I want an updated number, right? I always want to calculate with my most recent. So we can do this a little more automated fashion. So we're always grabbing the latest data. And I'm going to use a table calculation called last. Forget the equals 0 for now. This is just the table calculation, last. And what that's going to do is going to count from 0 backwards. So the last row is going to be 0. Second to last is 1, then 2, and then 3. And just counts. If you had 30 rows, the top row would be 30 and the bottom row would be 0. Always looks at the last row. So by saying last equals 0, I'm basically saying a true false. Give me a true when the last value equals 0. Let's get this off of here, and then we'll drag this onto our filter. I'm going to set it to true. What's going to happen? It's only going to show me 2019, but that table calculation calculated properly. Why'd that happen? Well, just like before, we calculate our table calculation, and then we filter the data set. So table calculation first, then table calc filter. All right. Now there's some other gunk in here, so we might just right click and not show the header. And we really don't need the sales number in here. We're using a table calc to get that. And now we have this big number we can put at the top of our dashboard to tell somebody very quickly, hey, your sales are up 20% over last year. So a couple of different order of operations tricks using table calculations. All right, I am a big proponent of no clutter on my dashboard. I think this probably has a little bit of clutter. I don't need these grid lines, but I'm going to leave them for now. One of the things I do is when I have tight spaces, I just try to get rid of as much clutter as possible. So this looks pretty good here, but if I were to put this on a dashboard and I had maybe 1/4 of the space, this might get a little cramped. And what happens sometimes is that the axes get cramped. So I like to clean up the axes as much as I can. Sometimes you can't, just manually set, how you want the tick marks, or because your data is always changing. So one thing I just like to do is to get rid of the 0. That might seem silly. There's lots of different reasons you might do that, but one is for clutter. So we can get rid of the 0 using formatting. That always seems a little bit weird to people. So I'm going to just right click and format. I'm going to go to the axis, and first thing I'm going to do is pick some sort of custom format. This is key to this trick. So I'm just going to pick currency and no decimal places, and we're going to set this to K. All right. And just like it was before, you have the 0 and 50, 100K. But then I'm going to click over this custom tab, and you'll see some stuff here. This gobbledygook, I always like to call it. There's some gobbledygook here. And then there's a semicolon and some more gobbledygook. Well, anything before the semicolon represents your positive numbers. Anything after is a negative number. So you see we got the same information, just kind of wrapped in parentheses, saying for negative numbers, put it into parentheses. What you don't see here is that anything after the next semicolon is 0 value. So if I say, since I've beaten Ken and my brother in favorites, I might put a semicolon, and I'll say Ken is a 0. You see what happens down here? I represented the 0 values with the word Ken. All right, I would obviously never do that. I just want to get rid of them. So what I do is just hit semicolon space, and that 0 is gone. Just clears up some of the clutter. I'm going to do that again just because every time I show that, people are like, okay. I remember the first time Jeff Schaefer showed me this, like, I don't get what you're doing. Show me that again. The formatting's weird. So let's just do it again on this one. So again, you have to set some sort of custom format. I'm just going to go number and change it to no decimal places. And then I'm going to go to custom. Remember, before the semicolon was positive, after the semicolon is negative, after the next semicolon, and I just added a space, of the zeros. So that 0 is now gone. Just cleans up some of the clutter on your dashboards. Now, a really great use case for this sort of custom formatting is a diverging bar chart. I'll be honest, I hate them. I don't like diverging bar charts because I think a bar and bar are typically better, but you see them a lot. There are ways to make them a little bit better, by using this value behind this value, but that's just a bar and bar chart. But regardless of my feeling for diverging bar charts, there is a problem with them. If you were assuming you wanted to keep the axis, how you typically create a diverging bar chart is to make one of the values negative, so they're plotted in the negative direction. So let's just assume this is a survey about 10 questions to males and females, right? The male number is stretching out to the right with positive percentages, and then we add a negative to the front of the female percentage. And what happens is we have this axis that shows a negative value. Well, it's not negative 50% of the population responded to this in this manner. It's a positive 50%. So if we're not going to directly label the bars, we have to format this axis. So we can just right click this, and we're going to go to this, and now it's already set at a custom percentage. I'm going to go ahead and just click custom. And what you're going to see here is we got just a percentage. There's no semicolon at all. Well, if we add a semicolon, anything after this shows me the negative percentage. So if I say negative 0%, you see my percentages are still negative. But if I get rid of that negative, guess what happens? My axis now shows the positive numbers, which is exactly what we want. And if we want to get rid of just an little extra clutter, we just hit semicolon space again, and we get rid of that 0 down here. So custom formatting, this is great for all kinds of crazy little tricks and hacks in Tableau. So hopefully you'll use it. All right, so our business, we have a lot of maps, but we don't hardly ever use an actual map. We use hex maps a lot. You can see we have a bar chart of the states. This is kind of a lot to take in. So we end up taking these bar charts very often and turn them into hex maps. You don't get as much precision with a hex map because you're working with color, but still a nice visual if you're just trying to get some quick information. So what do we do to create a hex map? I think most people do what I used to do is we would come in here, we'd edit the data source, give it a second. I'm still leery on the relationships. So I still do the old school joins. You could do the relationship there. So I've got just this orders table. So what I would do is click add, and then I'd go grab a shape file to create my hex map. I used to use the hex shapes XY coordinates that Matt Chambers came up with. It's just a spreadsheet that just has X and Y coordinates. So you essentially create a hex map by creating a scatter plot with X and Y coordinates. And then you join to this on state. But I mean, the truth is you don't really need any of that. We're not doing anything wild here. We're just joining up and adding some X and Y coordinates to the state. So what I tend to do is I have a little workbook and I create these big hex column and hex row case statements. This data is basically in this spreadsheet that Matt Chambers created, 6-7 years ago, and I just do the thing in Tableau. So I don't have to do a join at all. I just have a hex column case statement, a hex row case statement. I drag that onto columns, drag that onto rows. And if you've done this before, you have to reverse this. I probably should just fix the coordinates. And then we have what's the makings of a hex map, right? So really cool there. And you don't have to join at all. This came up yesterday in my work. We were connecting to a stored procedure and doing the join. Obviously, we have, there's issues there. So we just did the case statement in Tableau, and we didn't have to do the join at all. You might be looking at this case statement saying, okay, this is kind of a lot. Like, how long would it take to write this case statement? Case, state abbreviation, when, quote, AK, quote, then 0.5, and then the next line, and we do it 50 more times with DC included, right? That would take forever. Well, I cheat. There's something I created called the case statement generator. a couple of years ago. It's an Excel spreadsheet. Excel's good for some things, just not much, but this is one of them, and it allows me to create really fast case statements. If you look at my code here, basically I'm coding in all these whens and thens, so you don't have to. So when I created this case statement for the hex map, all I did was take the abbreviation in the column. I'll only do a couple of them, copy them. I'm going to paste as values, get rid of this last one here. And what you see is it's created this case statement for me. If I just come up here to new calculator field, I can paste that right in here. And I forgot to change this value, but we can create case statements in seconds from a list of values. So I call that my case statement generator. I also did it recently when the in operator came out. So if we wanted to say, or if we had an if statement, if my state was in this list of states, I could just go here, paste it, and then I have this in operator statement that only took me a few seconds to write. So kind of cool little resource, and check that out on flerlagetwins.com. All right, here's my last set of tips. There's a couple in here, but then we're going to move on to the next section. So this is what I tend to refer to as a spaghetti mess. We've got a sales by month, and we've got it broken out by country. All right, or excuse me, by state, right? So what would we do typically? I mean, this is a mess. You can't read anything. What would we do typically is we create a parameter and allow a user to kind of pick the state that they want. So let's do that. Let's create a parameter, and we'll call it, let's see, I don't know, for lack of a better word, state parameter. I'm not going to worry about the spelling here. We make it a string, and then I'd make it a list. And then, I can fix the values, or I can make them dynamic with dynamic parameters. And I go to Superstore and fill in state, right? All right, there we go. Now I have a state parameter. We don't need to do any of that. We can save ourselves a ton of time. We can go straight to state, right click, create parameter, and it does all that work for you. Names it string, list of values, right? You might have to change it to this so that if you wanted to make it dynamic, it'll set it as fixed automatically, but saves you about 4 or 5 steps. Now I've already done that. And if I go pick this parameter, absolutely nothing happens, right? Parameters don't do anything unless you tie them to a calculation or put them on a marks card. So I've created this calculation that just says highlight by state. Very simple. If the state parameter equals the state in my viz, right, in my chart, then the value is going to be true. Okay, we'll drop that on color. We'll see what happens here. It now colors the state that I selected. By the way, if you ever start off and your line is your red line that you want to show is behind all the other ones, all you got to do is drag that up on your color card. It'll sort that in front of everything else. So now if I pick, say, California, that's going to be way up here. It highlights California. Or if I pick some other state, I'm in Kentucky, probably going to be values way down here, right? All right, so now allows us to kind of drill into the individual state values while at the same time seeing the other values there. So we have sort of a baseline. All right, so that's one little quick tip. What if we have a dashboard that looks like this? So we have the thing, what we were showing before, sales by month, broken out by state, but then we have the aggregate sales by state, right? So I could come up here and I could pick, California, right? And it'll show me California. Let's highlight California just like we did before. So let's put that on that color mark on there. So now when I pick California, it highlights California in both charts, right? That's kind of nice, but we have the information here. Why do we want this extra parameter thing that's just kind of ugly and in the way, right? I pick California just because it's a big bar. So we can fix that. We can use a parameter action to allow us to just click on a bar to highlight that in both charts. Now, something really weird just happened. You guys notice that? Like these bars are red for the one I highlighted, and then they're this kind of dark gray. And when I click on it, everything else turns white. Well, this is the default highlighting in Tableau. It's meant to be on a white background. So when you put it on a dark background, something really weird happens. And sometimes it looks kind of weird on a white background. We will address that momentarily, but let's first create a parameter action. parameter action is going to allow me to click on the state, feed that value into the parameter, and then let the calculations do the work, right? So let's go dashboard actions, create parameter. I want on the state bar chart, and then I want it to affect the state parameter, and I want to feed in the state value. I'm going to set it on select. So when I do that and I click on, say, New York, get that weird highlighting again. We got to fix that. It's driving me nuts. It fed New York into the parameter, and then the calculations highlight New York in both charts, right? Or I can pick California. Right? You see that weird highlighting again, fed in California. Now it's showing California. This is a nice user interface for your users. They don't have to go pull this parameter. They can just click on the bar. Okay. I like the ability to clear this. What if I don't want to highlight anything? Well, we can do that as well. I can come up here to dashboard actions and change my parameter, and always name these. Don't just leave them parameter 4. I didn't do it for the sake of time. But in, I think, 2020.3 as well, Tableau introduced the ability to clear the selection. This is something we do all the time, but parameter actions didn't have this ability before. So what we can do is say, when we're clearing it, when we're clicking outside of those bars, let's set the value to something else. I don't know a single state named Kevin. So with this calculation, when state equals state parameter, right? Well, if I set this parameter value to Kevin, the state's never going to equal Kevin and should theoretically clear out. So if I click here, since New York here, and then I click out here, it should clear my selection. Well, it's not doing that. Why is it not doing that? Well, let me show you. We have a list parameter. Do you see the word Kevin in this list? No. But do we need this list at all? No, because what we're doing is clicking on these bars to feed this value into this parameter. So let's just set this to all. It's not going to affect how we click, because I click on Texas, it feeds in Texas. I click on California, it feeds in California. But now when I click outside, it's going to clear the action. It's going to send Kevin to that parameter, and it's cleared, and there's not a state that's equal to Kevin, so nothing's highlighted. All right. We don't need this parameter anymore, right? So now we have this really nice interface other than that weird default highlighting. Drives me crazy. So I'm going to show you the simplest calculation ever. It's called what I call fake highlight. I learned this from Brian Moore. It's just single quote, single quote. You could actually put in whatever you want. Doesn't really matter, but you're going to call that single quote, single quote. We're going to drop that onto detail. Looks like I already have it there. And what we're going to do is create a fake highlight action. Okay. I'm going to come up to dashboard actions, add a highlight action. We're going to pick the source sheet as that bar chart. We're going to pick the target sheet as that bar chart. We're going to set it on select, and then we're going to come down here to selected fields and pick fake highlight. We click OK. Watch what happens to this weird sort of white highlight. It's gone. Now, when I click on this dashboard on these marks, it sends the parameter action, and the calculation highlights those states, but then it does this highlight action to kind of clear that weird sort of selection. All right, I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to show my slides again. Caitlin, can you confirm that everybody can still see what I'm doing and we're still good?
Yes, I can see, and we are still
Perfect.
good.
All right, so that was kind of a lot. Hopefully there was a few tips that you'd never seen before, or just some techniques that'll be helpful. Now I'm going to get into something I refer to as tips you never saw coming. So that never saw is kind of highlighted there to draw your attention. Never saw, right? What the heck do I mean by never saw coming? It's because they're invisible, silly. All right, I feel like you have still no clue what I'm talking about because I'm being very ambiguous. I'm talking about something I call a transparent shape. All right, still you're probably going, okay, what is a transparent shape? Well, first off, transparent shape is super versatile. It allows me to hack Tableau with every dashboard I create, every work dashboard, every play, personal, Tableau public dashboard. I use this shape in pretty much every single one. Saves you all kinds of time, enables you to do things that you couldn't normally do. And in talking, I've done this presentation a handful of times, and most of the time, most people have never really used a transparent shape. So I'm going to show you how we use one. First off, I'm going to show you what it is. I'm going to do that in PowerPoint. So I'm going to go to Insert. I'm going to pick Shape and pick a square. Little PowerPoint trick. If you just drag it out, you won't get the aspect ratio 1:1, but you hit that Shift key, it'll give you an aspect ratio of 1:1. So you can do a perfect square, a perfect circle. All right. That wasn't supposed to be in the tips. All right. So if we click on this and we go up to Format, we can get rid of the fill. I can say no fill. Fill's transparent. And if I go to the border, I can go no outline, right? So now my shape has disappeared. Well, not exactly. The shape is there. It's right here. I can right click it, save as, wherever, save as picture. And then I can save that in my shapes folder in my Tableau repository. And then I can use that in Tableau. Right. So how might I use something so weird in Tableau? I am going to show you. All right, I'm going to start off with kind of a weird example. So just bear with me. It'll get to the point. So let's assume that we've got just this dimension table. We've got category, subcategory, manufacturer. We're just kind of visualizing this hierarchy, right? And as we've probably all seen a million times before, it gives us this ABC thing. What do we do to get rid of the ABC? I bet you all of you can name a couple of different hacks to do that. My favorite hack used to be just change it to the polygon mark. Change it to the polygon mark. You can't label them. That label just disappears. Well, in 2020.1, I think, Tableau released animations. Guess what? You can't animate a polygon. If you put a polygon on a dashboard, on one little sheet on a dashboard, the whole entire dashboard won't animate when you publish it. So this polygon mark will break all your animations. I love animations. I think they make just exploring data a lot cleaner and a lot easier to follow from one step to the next. So I don't use polygons anymore. We might change it to a text mark, and maybe we'll just do an inline calc of quote, quote, kind of like we did before. Put that on text, it disappears. All right, well, if it pops up in the tooltip, we could clean that up, but I can still select it. Kind of weird. I don't like it. We could change it to a circle mark, and maybe we just reduce the opacity all the way down to 0, right? Well, you can see it when I highlight it. I can actually click on that mark. It's just weird. There's about 10 other things that we could do to fix this, and I don't like any of them except for one. I like to change this to a shape. Go to shape. And you'll see, this thing's a little, I have an app symbol in front of my transparent shapes. I don't know why it doesn't come before 2010, it should, but because I use it all the time. So if I click on this, guess what I have? A bunch of transparent shapes. I really only need one, but if I assign a transparent shape to this guy, that disappears just like I did with everything else. It doesn't show in the tooltip, but even best, I can't select it. There's no circle there. There's no like blue highlighted square. It's just gone. So that kind of just sets the stage of one little quick usage, but we'll kind of build on where they become really useful. All right, so this is a chart that I create really often at work. It starts off with something like this. It's just a dual axis chart. This chart is really allowing us to use our models to optimize profit, right? So one would think at random, for 50% of the accounts, I would expect 50% of the profit. For 80% of the accounts, I would expect 80% of the profit, right? So what I'm showing here is some models that we built to basically improve that. So at 40% of the accounts, I'm able to get 58% of the profit, right? It doesn't really matter exactly what we're doing, but you'll see it's a dual axis chart. One marks a line, one marks a circle. But what I really want in a lot of like our marketing efforts, we use this chart in a lot of marketing pieces. I want to really focus on just one percentage. I don't want all these other percentages, right? So how might we isolate just this 30%, for example? Well, we might do something like this, and this is how I would have done it in the past. Maybe I'll use a parameter, but I just got this hard coded for now. And I'm just saying when the percentage of accounts down here equals 0.3, that 30%, then give me the sum of the percentage of the profit, else give me a null value. And then I drag this up and I make that the dual axis, and then that would show this the mark here on 30% and not anywhere else. Well, I don't need to write a calculation at all. No calculation needed whatsoever for this. All I need to do is take this percentage of accounts. I'll change this to a shape. I'll take this percentage of accounts and I'll drop it right on the shape. Okay, so now we've got the same thing we saw before. We've got the circle shape assigned to all of them. I'm going to select, let's just select them all to start. And then I'm going to deselect that one. And I'm going to change it to, guess what? A transparent shape. And boom, we have that chart built. I didn't need to write an extra calculation. I didn't have to use anything else but what's already on there for my dual axis. It's just a really quick and easy way to do it. And we could even do this with a parameter. We might need a calculation for that, but we could do it with a parameter, so we could change that value how we want it. We could do something similar with kind of this chart. I think that's a lot of clutter. I don't need this little dot on every single mark and every single month. Sometimes I just like to kind of mark the last month, right? So we could do something similar. In the past, we might say something like this to mark the last month. If the month equals the fixed max of the month, then give me the sum of sales, and then didn't write it explicitly, but else null, right? And then we could put that on our dual axis. And again, I don't see the need for it. All I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to a shape. I'm going to take this month and drop it on shape. That is not what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a different calculation. I'm going to call this max month. It's just simplified, just a true false when the month equals the fixed max month. Then I'm going to drop that onto shape. You could drop month on there, but it wouldn't be dynamic. And then I'm going to set the false values to transparent, the true values. I got this on a network drive, so it's a little slow. It's a little trick if you guys didn't know. If you put your shape, your Tableau repository on a network drive, the shapes selection runs a little bit slow. Then I'm going to set the true to that circle. And then we have this nice, really clean, clutter-free chart just marking the last point, and done with just transparent shapes. Those shapes are there, but you can't see them. My favorite use case is that weird blue selection that I touched on before when I was, I don't remember what I was showing, the band, right? So as a standard, when you use text bands, they get this weird blue highlighting, right? There's a way we can fix that. I'm going to duplicate this sheet just for demonstration purposes. But even on the sheet, we can click this and we get this sort of weird experience, weird user experience. And I remember the first time using Tableau and clicking on that, I was like, whoa, what did I do? What did I break? I do want users to be able to click on this. I want them to be able to click on this, and maybe it filters a sheet, maybe use it as a filter action or highlight action. So I want them to be able to click on this, but I don't want this blue interaction. So how might we change this? Well, we can change it to a shape. You're probably going to be able to guess everything we do from here on out. I'm going to go to more shapes and pick my transparent shape. Okay, now watch what happens when I click. That blue is gone. You don't have that weird blue. You can't select this transparent shape, so you don't have that weird blue selection. Now, if I go back and show you the difference, remember I used a duplicate, so this is still the old school. This user interface or this user interface, so much cleaner. I use a transparent shape on every single band I create. Now, if you were to want to color code these bands for text, you'll need to color. If you put color on some field on color, these will stay black. You have to come in here to text and match mark color, just as a kind of side note. This is something I answered on the forums actually 3 years ago, probably before I ever even, before I wrote anything about transparent shapes. By the way, transparent shapes is on my, the Flerlage Twins blog. You can check that out. But this is something where somebody wanted to show year over year. So they showed 2017 sales for January and then 2018 sales for January. And they wanted to recreate this chart they saw, just where this little circle shows the percentage increase, right? So 137% increase from this January to this January. Well, if I put a circle mark on a dual axis, what happens? Well, it's going to put that circle mark here too, and here, and here, and here. So I just put the year, I think, and we could make it a little bit better, make it dynamic, but I put the year on shape, made this a transparent shape, made this a circle, and we have that solution really easily. This one is from Luke Stanky. Luke Stanky wrote a blog post on transparent shapes. I was in the process of writing this blog post. I think I had like 10 use cases, and Luke Stanky releases it. He stole me. He stole my thunder. So he has about 6 use cases, some really good ones. I had all mine were very different. So so check out his website on it's tessellation.io, I think. And so he talks about this use case where he's looking at sales by subcategory. This is for, I think, 2020, but he also looked at how it changed from the previous year. So in 2020, this was actually the second highest value, and now it's the highest. So it moved up 1 value. This was the highest, and moved down 1 value. It moved down 1 value. This was the 6th. It moved up 3 values, right? So it's showing rank and how it changed from the previous year. This is a little hard to understand with just numbers, I think. So he added some color coding here. So blue, all right, this makes a little more sense. Blue going up, red going down. Maybe we'll save ourselves a little bit of pain and actually show some arrows, right? Okay, so up 1, down 1, up 3. What's this guy? Well, this one didn't change at all. Do we really want anything here? Not really. So let's just change this to a transparent shape. Let's just get rid of it. When nothing exists, then we know that this one stayed the same from the previous year. Now, so far, I've talked only about shapes, bringing those transparent shapes in through the shapes repository, through the shapes card. Well, there's a bunch of other cool tricks that we can do by just bringing in an image. And you can see my blog post. This is from my blog post, 14 use cases for transparent shapes and images. So one of those things that we can do with an image, not specifically a shape, is doing hyperlinks. Now, if you were to type out text like this text would pull directly from HTTP, blah, 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 right? I'm just going to copy this because I'll need it here in a second. So if you type out a URL, a full URL, it will actually take you to that website. It will turn into a hyperlink. But what if nobody wants to type that whole thing out? What if I just had the text, Tableau software, et cetera, and I wanted to turn this text into a hyperlink? It looks like it's hyperlink because I just made the text blue and underlined it, but it's not a hyperlink. I cannot click on it in any way. But what I can do is use a transparent image to sort of fake this hyperlink. So I'm going to drag this hyperlink, or excuse me, this image on top of here. It's going to ask me what image to add. So I'm going to choose an image. I'm going to come to shapes here. Top, hit Control Home, didn't seem like it worked. I'm going to go to my transparent folder. I'm just going to pick one of these. Okay. And then for the URL, when image is clicked, this thing takes a little while. I'm going to just paste that link in there. So now what I have is an image with a URL attached to it, but you can't even see the image. If I click off of this, you can't even see the image exists. But when I hover over it, it's got a hyperlink. Let's put this into display mode. As I click here, you can see there's a hyperlink, and I can click on that hyperlink to open the website. So a cool little trick to kind of fake hyperlinks. When I wrote this blog post, well, I'll come back to that. You may have seen this. This is on Tableau Public. This is a visual of a workbook that I created for work. We wanted in April of 2020, we wanted to visualize unemployment. As you guys all very well aware of, unemployment spiked in April 2020, jumped up to almost 15%. And we wanted to visualize what this looked like. What's the year-over-year change? What's it look like by state? We had all this data that we wanted to look at. And when I was done, I ended up with 18 different dashboards in one workbook. I think it had like 70 sheets in it or something. It's huge. And I thought to myself, I've got 18 dashboards. How am I going to allow somebody to navigate these in an easy to follow way? Well, I decided to do sort of a visual table of contents. How I did that was pretty simple. All I did was go to the dashboard. I went dashboard, export image. I saved an image for each dashboard. As you can see, that image is kind of stagnant. I'll get back to that momentarily. But all I did was bring in a navigation button, add that image, and I have this visual navigation. They can click on any of these buttons and go to that particular dashboard. But the problem is, like I just said, this is out of date. If somebody were to look at this dashboard and go, why is unemployment still so high? It looks like it just happened. Well, this is just an image from April 2020. It's not dynamic in any way, shape, or form. So I've had a couple of people say, like, I like that. I love that approach, but I really want it to be dynamic. I don't want any of my consumers to be confused by this thumbnail and think that things are still really bad. So what you can do is create a dynamic table of contents. All right. How do we make something dynamic? Well, just like we build any dashboard, we don't drag a bunch of images onto a dashboard. What do we put on dashboards? We put sheets on dashboards. This doesn't look exactly the same as this because there's two different sheets, but what I've essentially done is represent a dashboard with a single sheet. There's lots of cleanup we can do, and I didn't bother to do that. But now I can sort of lay out these 18 different sheets that represent dashboards, and they have the data flow into them. And each month when my data updates, it'll update and show that in my little thumbnail. The problem is they're sheets. I can't click on them. How does clicking on a sheet do me any good? What I can do is a very similar trick to what I just showed. I can take a dashboard navigation button. I can drop it on top of this thing. I always want to drop it smaller. I'm going to cover it up. I'm going to choose edit button. You can pretty much guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose an image button and go pick a transparent shape. I'm going to set it to navigate to TOC page 1, hit OK. And now what I have, sorry, got kids making noise down in the basement or in the kitchen, so apologize for that. Now what I have is what looks like just a normal bunch of sheets, but I have this invisible dashboard navigation button on top. And when I click it, it goes to that dashboard. So really cool technique to create this sort of dynamic table of contents. When I was creating this blog post about transparent shapes, I wanted something that looked cool. So I decided to kind of create this overlay buttons. I could have created all these as little buttons, kind of like I did here, but I wanted them to tessellate. I wanted them to interlock. So I just made this background in PowerPoint. And guess what I did? I just took transparent buttons and threw them on top of them. So when you click on this little shape, you think you're clicking on the shape, but all you're doing is clicking on this transparent navigation button. I use transparent shapes sort of in this visualization. It is kind of complex, so it takes a little time to load. This is about an old video game called NBA Jam. It's probably made before a lot of you were born. I'm an old guy. So I have this how to read button. So I want somebody to be able to click on this how to read button. So if we click on that, for some reason, this thing takes forever to load. What you see happens is that button appears to have moved. And you can kind of see the trick here. If I were to leave that image right here, it would be right on top of my text here. So what I've done is use transparency to create this shape up here in the top right with this big transparent square. And then another one here to create transparent square with it down here. When it's in, when it's published or when it's in presentation mode, you won't see this kind of square. So another little trick for transparent shapes. There's a cool way to do this. I will tell you ahead of time, but I love to give my users lots of interactivity. So this is just looking at sales over sales by month. If I click on 2016, it's a parameter action. You could do a filter action if you wanted. I use the parameter action on this one. Click on 2016, it filters this by down to 2016, down to 2018, down to 2019. But if you're OCD like me, you can see these buttons look super weird when I select them. They have this weird outline to them. It's really odd. I don't even know how to explain it. It just looks bad. So there's a cool little trick from Ryan Sleeper. You can use a filter action to fix that. I can't think of what the website or what the blog post is, but just check out playfairdata.com. They got some of the best tips ever. You can do that with a filter action. But if you were using another filter action, that thing tends to get a little bit complex and they don't work well together. So one of the little tricks that I use is to create a transparent overlay. Now I've got these buttons in a sheet behind. And before, like I said, when you clicked on a button, what it's doing is sending this value 2019 to a parameter, and then it's filtering this data based on that parameter. What I've done to avoid that weird outline is I've duplicated the sheet and then just made all these buttons transparent. So there's still a 2016 button, a 17 button, 18 button, a 19 button. I just float this thing around on top of it. So when I click, I'm clicking on that transparent shape. I think I'm clicking on the transparent shape and you don't get that weird outline. So like I said, the difference between that weird outline, you can see it when it's not selected, and this, I think, are leaps and bounds different. Back in 2018, actually, just about 6 months after I started working with Tableau, I created this no polygons technique. It's kind of like creating these flower charts, and you can use actual images. You can use things you draw in PowerPoint. The length of this means something. The length of this means something. But I use a transparent shape in this technique. You can read about it on the website. Ken creates a scrollable timeline. So the presidential elections, George Washington, and he allows you to kind of click through here, much better in presentation mode. Allow you to kind of click through all the different presidents, right? All the different presidential elections. He uses a transparent shape in there. And I help, we were talking about this actually on the call earlier before everybody joined. I help lead the Cincinnati Tableau user group. We haven't done any virtual events. We've kind of relied on awesome other tugs to take that and run with it. But we had planned out all of our tugs for 2020, and we did that in like December, I think. And we had planned out the March 2020 tug, March 2020. And we had 9 Zen masters that were going to be in town. My brother was going to travel from Pennsylvania. Jeff lives here in Cincinnati, so do I. But all these other folks were going to come into town. They were going to do something at the University of Cincinnati, and we're going to have a tug. One of my colleagues suggested we play Hollywood Squares, but with Zens. If you haven't seen Hollywood Squares, it's an old game show, like tic-tac-toe, and he wanted to call this Zennywood Square. So we were going to play this, and I decided to make a game board. And I wanted it to be really, really clean. And so what I did was use a bunch of different transparent shapes to make this really clean. So let's say we wanted to pick on the center square. We'd choose Steve Wexler. I've got a transparent button in here that's actually doing opening the container and showing this colored one on top of the black and white. And then if we ask them a question, depending on the answer, I can click one of these corners and I'm going to assign an O to it. Let's say they pick Kevin Flerlage. I turn colors and we assign an X to it. So I created this little game board and it has transparent shapes all over the place. It actually has 9 for each image, and then it has 2 more for each. It has 7 different transparent shapes in it, just to make this really kind of clean game board that we intended on using on our March 2020 tug. So give us a prize for the worst timing ever. I used 27 transparent shapes in that little thing, but in this one, I used 27,000 of them. No joke, 27,000. Hopefully some of you have seen this. This is something I call a data fam finder. It's on my Tableau public page. My intention, and this isn't updated, but my intention was when people get to start traveling again, or just out of curiosity, let's say that I travel to Denver, right? I'm going to be terrible at picking this, but what I can do is I can click on Denver, and it's going to draw this buffer calculation. Now I have a distance of 1,000 kilometers, and it tells me everybody that's in the Denver area. Well, within 1,000 kilometers, I can change this if I want to say, let's make this 200 kilometers. I put it in kilometers because the rest of the world uses kilometers. We don't. Well, sorry, my fingers are not working. Let's change that to 500 miles. And I probably whiffed. I probably didn't even come close to Denver, but the intention was, hey, I can go to anywhere. I can zoom into this if I want to make it easy on myself. But the intention was, hey, I'm traveling to, Australia. I can click on Australia and I can find who else is in the data fam. Now, who is on this list? It's just people that have chose to be on this list. I set up a Google form. They can fill out their credentials. They can put a lat long in there. And I asked them, just put a lat long to the center of the town or the nearest city. I think I put Cincinnati in for me, even though I live in Burlington, Kentucky. And then as they register, they show up as a dot on this. 335 dots in this on this map. I think I'm up around 500 registered total. But you probably are wondering, how am I clicking out in the middle of space? If I had just a regular map, that wouldn't work, right? And you might notice these buffer calculations are getting bigger. That's just because of the projection. That's why Greenland looks ginormous when it's actually much smaller than Africa. So how am I clicking out here? Let's take a look here. This is just a normal map. If I click out here, nothing happens, right? This is what we're used to. I have to click on a mark, right? I have to be able to click on a mark for something to happen in Tableau. Well, these are actually marks. I'm going to go here. And what I've done is not only compile this list of entries from people from my Google form that dropped into a Google sheet, but then I've unioned that essentially with a list of 27,000 cities in the world. I just found it on Wikipedia or something. List of 27,000 cities with their Latin longs. I bring those in so that the red dots represent people that have actually registered, but just the 27,000 cities where nobody has registered, I just made it a transparent shape. So if I click this and assign a shape to it, you can see all the different shapes. So most of the country is actually covered, most of the world is covered by one of these shapes. It gets a little sparse in some areas, but for the most part, you're able to click just about anywhere. So now you can't see those shapes. You don't know that they exist. But if I click somewhere, say Nigeria, it's going to feed a value like that parameter being so small. Let's change that to 1,000 again, make it a little bit bigger. It's what it's doing is then when I click on this, it's feeding in the lat long values into some parameters. It's creating a buffer calculation, and then it's using a distance calculation to say who is in that range. I can actually, on the live version, go download this list. Excuse me, it has Twitter profiles and LinkedIn profiles. And if you wanted, I could go to Nigeria and I could go connect with some of the people that I know from that area. Cool thing is Abby, who's a Zen master. She actually came to Cincinnati a few months ago. I got to hang out with her. She actually lives in Nigeria. So this is a use case for 27,000 transparent shapes. Again, all of this is available on our website. You can go to Flerlage Twins. You can just search for transparent shapes, but there's the URL if you want. The other tricks that I talked about earlier in the presentation, they are really kind of scattered through our blog. But you can check out the Flerlage Twins to see a lot of that. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say thanks to a bunch of different people. I'm not going to say all their names, but a lot of these tips came from other people. So thank you to all those folks that I've learned learned from over the years. All right, that's all I got. Happy to take questions if anybody has any.
If no one else has a question, I'm just curious. How many hours a week do you spend on like personal Tableau projects? Because you're like such a whiz. It's like incredible. Like I don't know if I would ever be able to be as good as you are.
I always tell people because I became Zen after 2 years, and people say, how did you get to that point in a short period of time? First off, I have a brother that was a Zen master. I had a boss that was a Zen master. That's really helpful. But I say that my 2 years is more like most people's 5, because I was not only doing it at work. After 6 months of doing it, I got a job doing it, right? And I wasn't only just doing it at work. I also was my hobby, where I would come home and I would play on Tableau to the point where about a month in, my wife said, hey, you need to back off the gas a little bit. So now I just like to stay up till like 2 o'clock in the morning. The family goes to bed, I'll stay up and play on Tableau. And or if they go out for, they go out with, my wife goes out with her friends and the kids don't want anything to do with me anymore, I just play on Tableau. I enjoy it. It's my hobby. I have a lot of fun with it. So yeah, I spend a lot of time outside doing my own stuff, writing blog posts, helping others. But I only do it because it's fun. I enjoy it. Yeah. So yeah, I spend a lot of hours doing it. That's for sure.
feel free to come off mute. Also, if you want to just throw any questions you have in chat, opportunity to chat with the Zen master. So take advantage.
Can you hear me?
Sure can.
All right, good. Hi, my name is Maylat. I'm trying to do a viz and a tooltip, which I don't know what your feelings are about that, but the table that I'm trying to show is a moving average of a window average. And I just want to show it for like whatever date that they're on. I just want to show the last 4 moving average for that. But I'm not able to figure out the filters on that very well. It's just showing everything at the moment.
And are you trying to use like the filters in that tooltip link to trim it back?
Yeah, so I tried using the week where the iteration starts or the week starts. And I'm just saying, okay, when you're looking at this week, I just want to show you what the moving average was for the last 4 weeks of it.
Gotcha. I will tell you that I've found the little filtering in the viz and tooltip to be quite finicky. I haven't been able to really figure out why. Sometimes it seems like I hate to say it, but it almost seems like it's a little bit buggy. And I've had that problem for a couple of years now, but haven't quite been able to put my finger on it. So you could be, I'm going to use a term my colleague used. It might be just a fart crossways where something's just not working like you would expect it to. Okay. That said, what I tend to do if I have trouble filtering a viz and tooltip is I tend to use parameter actions to do that. So you could use a hover parameter action, whatever you're hovering over. And I don't know what your use case is, and I don't see the dashboard. So this may not even be an option, but instead of trying to use that tooltip filtering, you can use a hover action or a normal filter action, but a hover parameter action, and then use that parameter to control that other chart. So that might be worth a shot. I've done that on numerous occasions when I couldn't figure out why that tooltip filtering wasn't working. So give it a try, and if you can't get it, you're welcome to mock up some data and send it to me, and I can try and help out. You can go to our website and you can just contact us right there, or just flerlage@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sorry that I can't specifically say exactly how to do it, but that should work.
At least it gives me an idea of where to start. Thank you.
Okay, sure, no problem.
Actually, I had a similar problem last week. Probably saw something that Kevin wrote about the parameter action, and it worked beautifully. So
perfect, awesome.
Recommend
That's great to hear. I think that those viz and tooltips, I don't love viz and tooltips because they're a little bit slow to load, and they seem to be finicky. So I tend to, but if I do use them, and I do occasionally, I tend to just use other types of filtering mechanisms than the filter, in the little tooltip link personally.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I'll just say one little thing, if you don't care. TC next week, TC Tableau Conference next week. I know you talked about that. If you like this, Ken, my brother and I are doing a presentation together. It's just 30 minutes. It's kind of less technical. It's more about dashboard design, making things easier on your users, making things look nicer. I tell you what, I don't like to look at dashboards that are ugly. I don't look at other people's dashboards if they're ugly. I just have a hard time doing that. So I think they should be visually pleasing, plus easy to use. So Ken and I are doing a session on that. So, check that out. But when you register and you go build your schedule, there's lots of awesome presentations by lots of different groups. But there's one that's categorized as community. They're basically what we consider community speakers, and lots of people I know that are community speakers. There's some speed tips, but those are going to be awesome sessions. I'd recommend those sessions if you're not sure what to go watch. Community sessions are going to be some of the best. So that's just me kind of I'm so ingrained in this community. I know lots of those speakers. I've seen a lot of them speak. So I would recommend if you're going to go to Tableau conference, there's plenty of ones that you're going to want to focus on certain content. But if you're just looking to see good presentations where you're going to learn a lot, go after those community sessions. And watch ours too.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. You gave like so many tips. It was a little bit overwhelming for me at points, but I took away a lot from it, and I hope that everybody else did. And we will post up the links to your slides on our community page and the link to this recording when it's ready. So yeah, thank you so much. Oh, actually, we had one more question. Barbara just asked something in the chat.
I'm relatively new to Tableau. Is there a good resource to help me identify ways to use Tableau to create some of the things I can do in Excel? Funny, because that's a blog post that I've always wanted to write, because so many people say, how do I, so many of us come from that Excel world. That's exactly where I came from. And we want to do the same things. We want to do conditional formatting, and highlighting and things like that. I honestly don't know of a good single resource that talks about how to do things that you could do in Excel in Tableau. Caitlin, Greg, anybody familiar with that resource? I'm not familiar. Maybe eventually I'll write that blog post.
I took some training with Steve Wexler once where he sort of talked about this. I'm not sure if he ever wrote anything about it, and I'm going to not do him justice around that. But I think the takeaway was basically they're different and you use them different ways, and there might still be a reason that you want to use Excel, but Tableau is a powerful tool. It does a different thing. Your users are going to use it differently. So just kind of think about it that way.
I do think there was, I seem to remember a presentation from a couple different Tableau conferences that was named, I think it was called like how the Excel do I do this in Tableau or something like that. So if you go to Tableau's YouTube page and go to the videos and search for Excel, I'll bet you'll find something like that. And I think it was a Tableau employee that had done the presentation a couple years in a row. So that might be a place to start, but that's the only thing I can think of. So
yeah, it's definitely stuff out there. It's a common question. Also, people a lot of times take it from the approach of my finance department is, they're savvy Excel users. They don't like what I'm doing in Tableau. Like, how do I kind of bridge that gap? So that might give you some ideas as well.
Right.
Great, thank you. I just didn't want to interrupt while you were talking.
Thanks for the question.
Does anyone else have any questions? All right.
Oh no, I know we're really close, and like this feels like it maybe is a little bit vague, but the transparent shapes thing reminds me of something I learned to do when I was using Articulate Storyline. But we had to do a workaround in our accessibility to make those work for keyboard navigator and screen readers. Is there some functionality in Tableau that allows the same kind of thing where you can like account for those transparent shapes for accessibility navigation? I
have absolutely no idea. I apologize. I honestly don't know. That's a really great question. And I honestly don't know. I'm not a pro at accessibility. We just work for a small company, so I probably should be. Honestly, I probably should be. But I don't know the answer to that question offhand. I'd love to find out. I do know there's a couple accessibility presentations. I don't know if they'll touch on that specifically, but I do know there's a couple of them at the conference this year. But yeah, sorry, I don't know the answer. And Caitlin just posted a link to the Excel video. I like my name better. how the Excel do I do that in Tableau? I think that would be a
Yeah,
good
I like
presentation.
that. There's actually like several that came up when I searched. So you may just watch all of them and see if they have different content. They're from different years.
Yeah, I think the one guy from Tableau had done it several years in a row. But yes, Elisa, sorry that I can't answer that question. It's a good one. I just don't know.
That's still a very new area for me too, the accessibility in Tableau. So
Gotcha. Yeah, I know Emily Kund is going to be presenting on accessibility. It's like her passion. So she's a community speaker and she'll be presenting that at the Tableau conference here next week. So might be a good one to check out.
There was one other question in the chat from Dakota. You might want to read through it, Kevin, because it's a long one.
Okay. I don't know the answer. I've never seen that error before. Dakota, have you ever opened a ticket with Tableau about it?
I did, but it was a while ago, so I might just have to submit another ticket.
You're
But I just wanted
publishing,
to check to make
Are
sure
you-
I wasn't missing something simple.
are you publishing to Tableau server, Tableau online?
Yeah, Tableau server.
Okay, yeah. Tableau online, I was thinking that would make sense, but Tableau server does not make sense to me. I don't know. I've never seen the error, but yeah, that was Tableau wasn't able to resolve it.
Yeah, our IT team submitted the ticket, and I don't know that it ever got resolved, so
Gotcha.
might just have to troubleshoot again.
Yeah, sorry, don't know.
That's all right. Thank you.
You guys ask tough questions here.
We are right at time. I want to be respectful of your time, Kevin, because it's late on the East Coast. So I think we will wrap if that's okay with everyone. Again, thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge. This was really, really great.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Have a nice weekend, everyone.
All right, you too.